It's that time again when we're going to talk about viewers' comments on our YouTube channel and on social media accounts. And this one is from a viewer who's named B, and it was submitted on July 8th, which is the day I'm recording this. So let me read this to you. And I love this comment because it epitomizes so much of the conversation in Canada around oil production and exports. Here we go. Such BS. Your pocketbooks will empty if we can't get Canadian resources to market. Now, leaving untapped resources in the ground sets up a scenario of economic suicide, both today and for the future of Canada. Now, do you notice that his comment is, and I'm assuming it's a him, is focused entirely on supply? And for a good reason. I mean, Canada has the third largest oil reserves in the world, and most of it is up in the northern Alberta and the oil sands. And the oil sands, their average cost, break-even cost per barrel is $27, which is very, very low, very competitive. And you can see that in the interview I did with S&P Global energy economist Kevin Byrne a couple of weeks back after they released their latest estimates. So there's no question that we have plenty of oil and we can produce it at a competitive rate. The question is, what about demand? Are there going to be customers for this? And we saw just in the International Energy Agency a couple of weeks ago released its oil market 2025 report, and it has moved peak oil demand at the global level from 2030 to 2029. China's peak oil demand is now forecast for this year. This year. It used to be 2027, 2028, maybe 2030, and that's a couple of years ago. Now it's this year, next year at the absolute latest. No more growth in demand between now and 2030. And that was the biggest market in the world with it drove oil markets for 25 years. Not anymore. It's done. So we need to move the conversation in Canada away from can we supply? Because yes, we can. Will there be customers? We don't know. And I think that we overestimate the competitiveness of our oil and our ability to meet the demand that will be out there, which we assume that in the 2030s, according to the IEA, will be declining. Okay. Here's his next comment. If everyone is so anti-oil and gas and anti-Alberta, which I'm assuming me, and I'm actually one of Alberta's biggest boosters, never mind, we'll let that one go. Why are we not seeing a dramatic decrease in the numbers in pumping gas into their cars at gas stations? Well, for starters, gasoline, I checked with Statistics Canada, Alberta gasoline consumption peaked in 2015 at 6.4 million liters. And by 2023, it was down to 6.1. It's clearly hit structural peak and is now declining, and a similar trend with diesel. And remember, this is during a time when the Alberta economy grew, the population grew, and the adoption of electric vehicles in Alberta, I think, is like 3 or 4% a year compared to BC and Quebec, which were at, they lead Canada, and they're at 20% of their annual car sales are electric. And that's very, very low in Alberta. So it's not electric vehicles that are doing it. It is probably efficiency improvements in new vehicles. They get better gas mileage. And that's actually one of the big drivers of peak oil demand is greater efficiency in the internal combustion engines we do have. And here's B's point number 3. Oh, by the way, there are communities in Calgary that will not allow solar panels as the electrical grid cannot handle the capacity. Huh? Well, first of all, I know plenty of people in Calgary, including my son-in-law, who's an engineer, put solar panels on his house, and there's no issue of feeding electricity back into the grid during times of excess capacity if you're set up for that. And otherwise, you're feeding you're serving your local household needs. Maybe you have a battery in the garage or the basement. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have an electric vehicle that you're charging, whatever. But I have never heard any community saying, no, you can't have solar panels. Now, there is an issue about demand because electric vehicles, they have, what are their batteries, like 77 kilowatt hours of capacity. maybe 50 kilowatt hours of capacity. That's a lot of electricity. And so there has been some concern about whether the neighborhood grids can handle it. So, for instance, can your transformers, which are old, uh, can handle more than three or four cars, EVs charging at one time? Maybe not. But then on the other hand, if you get time of use rates so that your rates between midnight and 6 a.m. are low, most people are going to charge overnight. There are ways around these things. And by the way, all the utilities are studying this issue or have programs in place already to handle it. NMAX, for instance, a couple of years ago, was surveying its EV owners to find out what their charging patterns were like. When did they charge? How much did they consume? That kind of thing. So they could design programs around it. And I might add, upgrade their infrastructure where they need it. This conversation around electric, what are we going to do about the grid? How are we going to handle this isn't catching anybody by surprise. Regulators have known about this. Utilities have known about this for a long time. They've been planning this. Not all of them have adapted as well as they should have, fair enough, but they're all on top of this issue. And it's not like they're not, planning upgrades, not planning new supply of electricity, on and on and on. Okay, here's B's last comment. Check out Alex Epstein or Scott Tinker for some interesting thoughts on this anti-push. I get so tired. I don't know who Scott Tinker is, but I do know who Alex Epstein is, and I get this all the time. He's a pro-fossil fuel advocate and American, and he writes books about, the moral case for fossil fuels, that kind of thing. And the problem with these guys, and Vaclav Smil, the Canadian professor of energy history, is very well known around the world. The problem is that they're all look at energy through the rearview mirror. It is not about, you can't say the future of energy is going to look just like the past, because the thing that has changed is not just the supply side with wind and solar and battery storage, bringing down the cost of renewables so it's competitive with, say, coal or natural gas. That's not the issue. The issue is on the demand side. The internal combustion engine has never had a competitor in 125 years. It does now in the form of electric vehicles. It's as simple as that. Global transportation makes up 45% of total oil demand. And electric vehicles are, well, the world outside of North America, the world is electrifying its transportation sector so rapidly that it's already taken 5 or 6 million barrels a day of demand, or voided it, I guess would be the better way to put it. So it all comes down to demand and to some extent supply. And thinkers like, using that with respect to Alex Epstein, I'm using that loosely, but they are advocating for more reliance on fossil fuels. Fossil fuels have been wonderful things. We shouldn't abandon them. We're not abandoning them. The market is abandoning them. Better technology has come along. It's cheaper, it's better, it's more efficient, and customers are starting to adopt it at much higher rates. That's where it comes. So anyway, B has done us a favor here. He's raised some issues that are common. You see these talking points all the time on social media, and there's a response to every one of them.